Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 506, Area Majority and Area Influence Games.
Welcome, citizens, to Meeple Nation. Grab your favorite beverage, pull up a chair, warm up those dice, and join us at the game table as we discuss board games and the board gaming world. Each week, the hosts of Meeple Nation share their love for board games and the amazing memories that come from playing games with some very outstanding people. Let us now join our hosts in their natural habitat, the game table.
Meeple Nation Podcast is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. Head over to their website, check out the amazing product that Berkey has on GameToppersLLC.com. Upgrade every game night you own for every game night. We love our toppers. We have several between us, and we use them all the time. Almost on a daily basis, I would have to say. High quality, the mats are beautiful. You will not be disappointed. Head over to GameToppersLLC.com. Check them out. You'll love it.
Andy, you just got back from BGG Con.
I did.
So when we're recording this, you just got back 2 days ago.
Indeed.
You got a chance to hang out with Berkey for a little bit, give him a high five. Did you get a chance to peek at any of the mats that he had there?
I did, and some of them are really amazing. I actually jumped over to the Kickstarter page after talking with Trent there in the booth, because he had mentioned a few of the mats that I hadn't seen yet when I first initially looked at the Kickstarter page, and some of those are really amazing, and I'm going to have to order some.
Pretty excited about. Glad you got the opportunity. The rest of us had to do the no fun BGG Con and stay home. So
Yeah, everybody ditched.
Everybody did. It was just you and your girls. I hope you had a ton of fun.
It was a blast.
We are the hosts of Meeple Nation. I'm Nathan Howard.
I'm Andy Holliday.
We have a website, meeplenation.com. On that website, you can find all sorts of goodness about us. We have blogs, we have photos, we have bios. There is a link to all the episodes that we've had in the past. You think we're bad now? Go back to some of those early episodes and see how far we've come. Also on that page is our Patreon link. We love our patrons. Our patrons help us to keep stuff coming and help us expand to new content. We've started kicking out some bonus episodes. We have some one-on-ones with Ashley. We have some sit-downs with Sierra and some table laughs with Lydia. Hopefully you guys are liking those. And if you're at that patron level, you get content 2 weeks early. We're so grateful for all that they do for us. And then also, everybody, you can email us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We love to connect and to talk with individuals. We love our weekly questions from Salvatore. Most of those questions tend to end up on our episodes. So if you have a question, you have a comment, you have a thought prompt that you want to push to us, send that over to us at meeplenation@gmail.com.
Like you said, Nathan, I just got back from BGG Con. My goodness, we played a lot of new games. So we had a total of 48 plays and 23 new games.
That is way awesome.
I'm really excited about that. That's the best I've ever had at a con. It was just back-to-back games. And it was nice because my daughter Sierra and we would go in and typically hit the new games, the new game shelf. We'd both pick out a game, sit down, read the rules really fast, and then play them back-to-back. Go throw them back in the library, pick 2 new games, and it was just like that constantly.
That is awesome.
Until my other daughter Amara hit a wall with new games and we had to go back to some of the oldies but goodies.
And what did she fall back on? Something light, I'm sure.
We told her, go pick out a game that you want to try that's going to give your brain a break, and she picked Alchemists.
Which is definitely not a light game whatsoever.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I still have struggles with Alchemist. I mean, I've only played it the one time. I came home very confused. I took home the score sheet to try to just wrap my head around that. That's a game that I definitely need to play more than once to get a feel of it. And for Mara to fall back on that as a light game or a refreshment game, that's a pretty heavy refreshment.
Yeah, but to her credit, that's the best she's ever done in that game. Because
awesome.
She's usually struggled to get the whole deduction side of it, and she actually was really excited because I got one figured out. It was the first time she actually knew what one of the
That's awesome.
One of the properties was.
Way to go, Amara.
So yeah, it was great. As far as my highlight of the con, my favorite game of the con was the Pirates of Maracaibo. It's a pirate game, so I had to try it.
So winner right there in your book.
But oh my gosh, it was amazing. Like, you have your ship, you're upgrading your ship. You potentially every round you're either buying improvements for your ship or crew, or you're buying upgrades, moving your tokens up on your ship. You get you can get a header for your ship. There's just so much going on and so many ways to score points. On top of that, you have island exploration that you way around the rivers and score points and get bonuses by doing your explorations around the island. It was kind of funny. So we got to the final scoring. This was our second playthrough because we played it twice, and we got to the final scoring. Sierra was taking a nap and I wanted her to try it. We just kept going around the board, putting another 50-point token on and going around the board again and another 50-point token. She's like, holy cow, I've never scored so many points in the game in my life. This is really satisfying because there's just a ton of end of game points. We finished it and she's like, that was cool. I loved the game. You're traversing across the board that's created with cards. That's going to be different every time as far as the board set up, which is nice.
Yeah.
When you interact with the card itself is the improvement that you're going to purchase. When I purchase that, I take that card and I set it in front of me and it gets replaced with a new card. So the board is constantly changing throughout the game as well. And you're going to traverse that ocean 3 times. Once you hit that third time and you arrive at Maracaibo for the third time, that triggers the end of the game. And then you do final scoring. Fun both times. I thought I need to play it twice just to see if it was just the replayability aspect of it. And I loved it both times. In fact, I think I liked it better the second time than I did the first time. So it was a winner in my book.
Well, that's great. For me, I have been playing a lot of Jaipur. I know I've talked about this a little bit lately, but this is a game that my wife and I kind of thrive on, these 2-player games that we're trying to find, or games that play really good with 2 players. And Jaipur is a great 2-player game. If there's a market row out there and you're trying to acquire cards from that market row to bring them into your hand in order to buy goods of that type, gold and jewels and different types of materials that you can buy. And if you have 3 of those, then you're going to get a bonus card. Or if you have 4 of those, you're going to get a higher bonus card. And if you have 5 of any one type of material, then you're going to get a 5 bonus card. Those points increase exponentially. That's what really wins you the game. So you can acquire some of those cheap goods that the tokens aren't going to give you a ton of points. If you get 5 of them, you can do that, and there's enough of those lower bronze ones that you can get that twice in a game sometimes. And even though they're lower cards, if you can get those bonus points, keep you in the game, keep you involved, so that you don't feel like, oh, well, Andy's gone on and he's just got all the high point tokens. He's going to win the game for sure. Self-managing of the game, kind of catch-up mechanic, does it really well, I think, and keeps you involved in the game so that you don't feel like you're ever losing. I think Jaipur is great. My wife really enjoys it. It does have a BGA implementation. I know that doesn't mean much to you, Andy, but...
Not really.
But to me, it does. One that we play both at the table and online. Jaipur is a great game.
Nice. It sounds like fun.
Yeah.
It's one I need to try.
You should.
So we have our weekly question from Salvatore, and this is another well thought out question, and I really enjoy. It's not just a, hey, what do you think about this? He gives a lot of background on exactly, so you know exactly what he's asking you when he actually gets down to the question. So bear with me. This is going to be a little lengthy. So the title is "Time is a Luxury That You Don't Have, Admiral." Khan Noonien Singh from Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Our time is our most precious commodity, and it cannot be replaced. As a resource, it must be spent on things like work and other obligations to produce money to support our families and to pay for basic necessities that allow us to live comfortably. Our time is also exchanged for the means to purchase board games, which in turn take our time to play them. Wasted or lost time is one of the most commonly lamented things we retrospectively reflect on our relationships or our experiences. Thankfully, I came to a point in my life where I realized the true value and importance of time and make an effort to use it efficiently to squeeze the most out of my life. My wife and I are certified 7 Wonders Duel addicts. We play 2 to 4 games a day, 7 days a week. I enjoy playing with the Pantheon and Gora expansions from time to time, but my wife prefers the base game and only begrudgingly plays the expansions because she loves me. All series board gamers have a shelf of shame with incredible games waiting to be played because we don't have enough time to play them. This queue of board game bliss waiting to be experienced may be shorter or longer depending on the depth of our board game acquisition disorder. I refuse to count the number of games in my multiple shelves of shame to calculate the percentage of games owned versus games played because I know I will find the number too depressing. If I did calculate that percentage, I certainly would not share it with my lovely wife because it would validate all of her complaining that we spend too much money on games that we haven't yet played.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yes. And my wife and I rolled out of bed this beautiful Saturday morning and immediately played a game of Seven Wonders Duel. We wouldn't have it any other way. In the midst of our game, I thought how smaller my shelves of shame would be if we didn't play 60 to 90 minutes of Duel a day and instead played those games that have been sitting fallow on our shelves. My question to Meeple Nation is this: do you have a board game that you love and play so much that it prevents you from learning and experiencing new games?
I love this question, and I actually penned a response and sent it to Salvatore already, but I thought this was such a great question to involve both of us. And usually Doug, we didn't excuse Doug, but Doug is ill, so Doug is not here today. I have games on my shelf of shame, and I think it was a week or two back we talked about passing on a game. We talked about action point games that we don't own. The question came up, or the comment came up, is I like that game, I'm interested in that game, but I'm not interested in that game enough to add it to my shelf of shame. I have a ton of games that I haven't played, but there's still games, Salvatore talks about the acquisition disorder, and there are still games that I'm picking up on a regular basis that just feel like, oh, this is a game I really want to get to. And as we're talking about our games of area majority and area influence games, I have a pretty lengthy list of games that are on my shelf of shame that fit into this category. Some great games that I want to get to, but we just haven't. I mean, you talked to Andy about your experience at BGG where you had both you and Sierra that would take the time, sit down and read rules. And I've tried that for a good while. We had Corey that was here from New Jersey, and he was a great resource to, hey, take this game home next week, bring it, teach us. We have life, everything complicates our time, eats up that time.
Well, I think that's part of the reason why my shelf of shame exists is the rules.
Oh, yeah.
And Salvatore makes a good point. It's kind of a high value thing, especially when you're as busy as we all are. Have even an hour to sit down and just read rules to learn how to play a game. It's so much easier just to pull a game out that you already know and just play it. My biggest thing are probably campaign games.
Yeah. We all have a weakness for campaign games.
If it comes down to it where, okay, am I going to pull a game off my shelf of shame and try to learn it and play it, or am I going to try to work towards finishing one of our campaigns? I know what I'm going to choose. There are certain games that are campaign games that are my favorite games that I've already played through the campaign and I want to do it again.
Well, I've played Pandemic Legacy Season 1 3 times, and I know everything that's in that, but given the opportunity, I would totally play that again.
Probably a fairly common thing that Salvatore is going through. I think in our own way, most board gamers probably have the same situation where if you are a gamer that has the acquisition disorder that so many of us have, where you are going to have a shelf of shame, it is do I take the time to learn this and sit down and slug through the rules? And once again, it depends on how complicated that is.
For sure.
If it's a big, heavy game and it's got a 40, 50-page rule book, that's pretty daunting. That's more than an hour of sitting down. That's 2 or 3 hours of really trying to dive into that to learn that game so you can teach it.
Yep.
Versus if it's only, 5 to 10 page rule book, you can get through that quickly, get it to the table, and it's played, which is kind of what we did at BGG, why we got so many new games to the table. Most of them, there were a few bigger ones, but most of them were pretty quick rules and pretty quick teaches. So I think it depends on what is your shelf of shame filled with? Is it filled with something that can easily get to the table? Is it sitting there because it's like, oh my gosh, I got to read that monster rule book and I don't have time?
Well, I think you bring up an excellent point because my shelf of shame consists of games that I'm going to play with my wife, games that are set aside for like a large gathering activity, kind of those air quote party games that you love so much, or that there's those campaign games. And then you introduce or you start talking about any of our RPG stuff. Holy cow, that eats up so much time. But to reel it back and go back to Salvatore, is there a game that's on my shelf that go-to game that you go to, you have no regrets playing every time you get a chance to play it? I kind of relate that to my wife. My wife loves the game Patchwork. And like Seven Wonders Duel, this is a very simple go back and forth game. You take in actions, take your turns. Very much a 2-player game. We had a staycation. I tried to introduce my wife to the 2 expansions that I have for Seven Wonders Duel. We didn't get those because we had introduced ourselves to Barren Park. Took almost all of our time. We loved that game, played that several times. Patchwork, one that my wife will play. and it's one that she loves. It's one that she loves. It's by far her favorite game. Every time I play, and I'm terrible at that game. I lose 95% of the time. I lose that game. I never discount the time spent on that as lost time. For me, take away the need to win. I don't need to win. I play games for the relationships that they form, the relationships that they strengthen, and the bonds that it builds. For me, that's what I get out of board gaming more than my need to victory. And plus, they're a lot of fun. Patchwork is a game that we'll play time and time and time again. No regrets.
10 or 15 years ago, I'd probably say that was Dominion for me.
Oh, that's a game I've played a lot of.
Now, the only thing that comes to mind, I just don't ever feel guilty getting to the table, that takes actually a lot of time, is probably Shadows of Brimstone.
That is kind of a weakness for you currently.
It is. Yeah. And well, I've spent a lot of my time on it, because it's not just playing the game, it's painting miniatures, it's putting everything together, it's organizing everything. So the time commitment that's already there, I feel like I really have to play it, and I love the game. So that helps.
Yeah. I mean, I look at the time I've spent on our G.I. Joe campaign that we haven't even begun. And I've spent, I'm going to say, close to 100 hours where I've put together stories, timelines, trying to flesh out all of these characters' backstories so that I can intermingle them, bring all that story together. And I haven't even made it through the core rule book yet, so I don't even know how to play. But I got this really great story that I was originally trying to keep to 20 sessions. Honestly, I don't think we'll ever finish this, but I hope we start it. I hope we start it too, because I'm really excited about all this work. As being a big G.I. Joe fan growing up in my youth, that was something that was key to my childhood. I've loved being able to kind of make this narrative story. In my mind, even if we don't play, I've made this great story, but I do want to play.
Yeah, I do as well. I mean, you contrast that with, we're starting a D&D 3.5 campaign this coming Friday, and I haven't really got much on paper yet.
Yeah.
I just haven't had time. I've got this Thanksgiving week where I have a little bit of time off work, and I hope I can at least get something together for the first session.
And that is kind of funny how different people are, right? For me, I need this. I have this vast bulletin board, right, with all these strings pulling here, going there, trying to get all of that onto some paper and into some form of usable content, instead of just a thought continuum exploded onto the wall. So
nice.
Yeah, it's going to be good when we get it started, but we got to get it started, and somebody's got to flesh out those rules. Anyways, Salvatore hopefully answered that question.
Good question. All right, so we are going to talk a little bit about area majority and area influence games, which admittedly is not one of my favorite mechanisms.
I agree, but then I looked at the list of games that I own that BGG tags as containing that mechanic, and I have a pretty long list.
You and me both.
And I have an even longer list of games on my shelf of shame that are part of this category.
You and me both.
Yeah. So I kind of want to start off on some of like maybe those basic ones. Like the first one that comes to my mind is Carcassonne.
Right. Yep.
And, when you first get playing with it, that's not really an area control game, but it totally is. You're fighting for those castles. You're fighting for those roads. You're trying to take over some of your opponent's roads, and you're trying to get into those castles. All that very much an area control game, depending on the mentality of the players. This is a game that I play with my wife. She gets angry when I start to butt into her cities. And so as a wise relationship focused person, I'm going to back off on trying to steal all of her cities. That still comes down to, I'm trying to monopolize on getting my farmer into the areas that are the best. And that's free game. I'll back off on her cities a little bit. Still trying to manipulate and get onto that. And she thinks she's so clever when she busts into mine, and she's a little giddy when she busts into mine.
Nice.
But it's good. I love Carcassonne. It's a game that was really just kind of put on my shelf and really forgotten about for a long time until COVID happened, and that was one of those games that was on BGA. Since I have played Carcassonne within the last 2 years, probably like 60 to 70 times.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's just one of those evergreen games that Cheryl and I can play. And Patchwork, I'm sure, is well over 100 at this point. But
That's impressive.
yeah.
You know, I think for those of us who have been gamers for, 20 plus years, 20, 25 years, most of us probably have a copy of Carcassonne of some sorts on our game shelf. Mine is Carcassonne Hunters and Gatherers, and it was one of my first games that I bought, as an adult anyway. I got to be honest, I haven't played that in a very long time. It has been sitting, I don't even know where it's at on my shelf. I know it's there somewhere.
I know where mine's at. It's right there.
Nice job. You have 6 copies of Carcassonne over there. What are you talking about?
Carcassonne the Tower, which includes all the little mini expansions, Carcassonne the Ark of the Covenant, Carcassonne Discovery, Carcassonne the Castle.
So there are those of us that have acquisition disorder, and then there's Nathan.
He's got issues. 1,500 of them, to be exact.
Spaceballs the lunchbox.
There was somebody in the parking lot that had Spaceballs the bumper sticker.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
I had to take a picture of that. I thought that was great.
When I think of area majority, we both grew up with Risk, and that's one of the first things that come to my mind, and probably one of the reasons why I don't really care for that mechanic.
Absolutely.
But there is a game that implements the mechanic like Risk does, or actually several, but one that comes to mind that I don't mind the game. I actually kind of like it, and that's Small World.
Yeah.
I really like Small World because you're changing factions constantly. You get to choose when it becomes inactive and you pick a new one, and then you come in and have a completely different strategy, playing the game completely differently. It freshens it up. It gives you're not to where you're getting stuck in Australia and you can't do anything ever again because someone has loaded up everything on India and you can't leave.
Right.
Everything will change once you gain that new civilization, or all of a sudden you are conquering everything all over again and scoring a ton of points. As far as that goes, if you're going to have an area control game where there is conflict like that, I think that's the way to do it, because you're expecting to be taken over, and it's not that big of a deal because you're just going to go into regression and pull out a new civilization and everything's wonderful. And obviously a lot of people like it because they have a ton of expansions for Small World as well. And I don't have them all. I have a lot of them, but I don't have them all. But I haven't played that game in forever either. A lot of people don't like it because of the direct conflict.
Yeah.
If you're going to have it that way, they implemented it really, really well in Small World.
Well, and I love the replayability of Small World.
For sure.
You have the race and you have those traits.
Yes.
And so the gameplay is completely different every time. So much replayability in that.
Yeah.
But I like that you bring up Risk. Like you said, probably one of those big reasons that you and I don't like those area control majority influence games, because of those opportunities where you're stuck and you're just waiting out this game. And we talked recently about games, those big epic games like Twilight Imperium, where you're stuck and for the next 90 minutes to 120 minutes, there is nothing you can do that will bring you back in the game, and you're just waiting it out.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
Yeah, that makes for me personally, that makes such a sour experience. It's great when I'm the one winning, for sure.
Yeah.
But when I'm the one winning, that usually means there's 3 to 4 other people that are just...
Can this game get over?
Yeah. Which kind of just deflates the whole point of winning, right?
For sure. Well, and you're there to have fun, and everybody's there to have fun. So if that's taking away from that, right, then if you don't mind losing and you like the story, I have one of my brothers, my brother Dan, he's all about the story. So he could be getting decimated, but if like in his mind, if he's seeing this like he's as though he's reading a novel or something like that, then he's okay with it, and he wants to play it out and see it to its end, and that's fine. But there are others that, no, they're just like, okay, get this over with. Let's move on and get something else to the table.
Yeah, well, we can relate that to our friend James, who plays games, not necessarily the best rule absorber. He'll play a game and he'll have a blast doing his own thing, knowing full well there's not a chance that he's going to win. But like we played Dinosaur Island, all of a sudden he's like, you know what? I'm going to make sure that my dinosaurs eat as many of my patrons as I can. I'm like, well, that totally goes against the game. I don't care. I'm having fun.
Which is the whole point, right?
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, so it does taint the experience a little bit, right? It taints the results.
Yeah.
But at the sacrifice of saying, James, I don't want you at the table. No, I think it's fine. I'd rather have people come and have some fun and enjoy the experience for sure.
Yeah. One of our funnest experiences with an area control game was Bootleggers.
I love Bootleggers. I've only played it the one time, but that time was amazing. It almost made my top 5 because of that one experience.
Just one play of it. It almost made your top 5. That's pretty impressive. But it really was. It was a standout experience. And I don't know if it would be repeatable.
Kind of like one of those things, like, I'm just going to put that on the shelf. That experience was awesome. I don't want to taint it.
Yeah, exactly.
But then I did pick up I found a copy at a game swap. So I got me a copy for like $10-15. I can't remember what it was. It was really cheap. So I want to experience that again. I'm a little hesitant, but
I think we could probably do it because it was, I mean, a lot of that was just what made it so much fun was all the negotiating and backdoor deals that were going on at the table.
All over the place.
All over the place. But you're trying to gain the most influence in those speakeasies so that you're the one that gets your booze sold and you make all the money, all the profit from that contraband that's getting sold in your speakeasy. I wouldn't necessarily say cutthroat because it has a little bit of cutthroatness in it, but a lot of it is just shady deals.
Oh yeah.
That you're trying to make with the other players. It's like, oh yeah, if you do this, I'll pay you this. Okay, yeah, it sounds like a good idea.
It sounds like great.
Everybody's at the table is like, what are you doing? He's kicking our butts. Why are you paying him money? What are you doing?
Yeah, that was such a great experience. I don't even remember who won. I'd have to look that up.
I can't remember either.
But that was such a great experience. Bootleggers was a ton of fun. So I still need to find the expansion for that, but
I have it.
I know you do. It's not readily available, so I need to. Hopefully, I don't have to buy somebody else's base game again.
Oh yeah,
to get the expansion. But I probably would.
Well, we should play my expansion first just to make sure it's right because I haven't played it yet. We need to play it with the expansion for sure.
Great game, ton of fun with that. 2
games that use implement this area control aspect in the same way. And they're related games. So that's Wayfarers of the South Tigris, and then the newest one, Scholars of the South Tigris, also has an area majority aspect to it. And it's used in the same way. And you have these minarets on the board that you are putting influence tokens on that will score you points at the end of the game. Scholars of the South Tigris, this is one that we played at BGG. And for the first time, I got my Kickstarter a few weeks ago. Maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. I've gotten the rules read and I've been wanting to play it, and we finally got it to the table at BGG. It's a great game. Very unique. Once again, Shem Phillips, all of his games are so unique from each other, even though they have the same feel. It's incredible how he does that.
Yeah, they're very drastically different games. You sit down and you're familiar with the iconography that's on the cards. You're familiar with the pieces. Yeah.
This is one where you're translating documents. You're translating scrolls, and everything needs to be translated into Arabic. But the scrolls have come in several different languages, and you have to hire scribes or be able to trace, align, and pay scribes that have been brought into that have been hired and are in the little workshops or the studies that are on the bottom of the board. And you have to be able to trace a line, basically, okay, this one speaks Chinese and is going to translate it into Sanskrit, and this one's Sanskrit into this, and you trace it back to Arabic, and then you have to pay each of them a gold.
Oh, interesting.
And once they hit their max gold that's above them on the board, once they hit their max gold, they retire, and then they go to whoever hired that scribe. It goes into their underneath one of their actions, and that's now a permanent action that they're going to gain for the game. So there are some really cool mechanisms, but part of that is influencing those 3 minarets because you have to be able to use your dice, and you want to be able to get points that come out, because if you have majority several times during the game, you're going to gain some sort of bonus. You get to pick from 3 different bonuses when the 3 cards come out, that the 3 scoring cards during the game, and then you also score points at the end of the game if you have the majority control over those. And it's interesting how often that changes. When those scorecards come out in the middle of the game, you control the purple minaret. Great, you get to pick one of these 3 bonuses you get to pick from, but you have to put one of your influence markers on that card to take that bonus, and you have to take the bonus, which surprisingly, that one influence marker being taken off switched who had control of that at that point, and it immediately switches. So yes, they got the bonus, but now they lost the majority.
Interesting.
So they have to either try to get it back or try to go get majority on a different minaret. I like that aspect of it. I think it's done really well. And as far as that goes, Wayfarers is similar but different, just like you would expect from a Shem Phillips game. Both of them are done very well.
There's a lot of similar mechanics that I'm going to be talking about next week in one of my top 5 games that pulls along those same lines. So when I start talking about that, remind me.
Okay.
One that I really love that I seem to have issues getting people to the table to play is Bunny Kingdom. And I think too many people, as soon as you say bunny, they're like, killer bunnies, I'm out.
I have to admit, that is the first thing I thought when...
Yep.
It's like, oh, bunnies, no. Ugh, I got PTSD from killer bunnies, but
yeah,
go on. Yes.
I feel your pain 100%. And it's funny because I always have to concentrate and say Bunny Kingdom and not Killer Bunnies. But Bunny Kingdom, drastically different game, not related at all. Just because it has bunnies doesn't mean it's the same. It's an area control game where you're putting your bunnies out. You're going to play a card. The game board is a grid, so you have letters and numbers. Each card represents one place on the grid. And so you're going to place a bunny onto that place, and that allows you to gain that influence. And then you're going to try to place buildings, and those buildings can have 1 tower, 2 towers, or 3 towers, and you're trying to place those and get townships or your fiefdoms trace a path orthogonally to as many towers and as many bunnies as you can get. So you're trying to maintain that control over those areas. It is a drafting game. Those cards are getting drafted as they're passed along, so you can hopefully try to pick and choose. But in many drafting games, it gives opposing players prime time to counter draft. I think is a key element in the game because you don't want to just allow people to run away with it. But it's one of those things that gets a little bit frustrating. This game's still very fun. There's 3 resources on the board, I believe. And then there's some special resources that if you get cards, you can increase that. But you're going to take however many of those resources, unique resources that you have in your fiefdom, and you're going to multiply it by the number of towers that are in that fiefdom, and then you're going to score points. And so you want to try to monopolize that the best you can. It's a very clever game. It's a very cutesy game, but one that I really like, and I try to get to the table as often as I can. As previously mentioned, the word bunny scares off a lot of people.
Well, and I think if I do recall, the 2 or 3 times I've played this, you destroyed us. Like, completely destroyed us. Maybe that's why we don't ever play it.
That could be. This is one of those games. This is where playing it with Hug, I got to teach it to the Hug ladies. When they told me that if you teach a game and you win, that means you're a terrible teacher. And so when I taught this game, and I believe you were playing that time, that they told me I was the worst teacher because I totally, and it wasn't really all that intentional, but it was just because I was a little bit more familiar with.
Yeah, it was the synergy. Game. It was the synergy of the cards because you did really well on getting the right cards that worked really well together with what you were trying to do. And that comes with experience, especially with anything that has drafting in it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the game is. If there's a drafting element, you being familiar with what cards are in the game and what works well together, you're at a huge advantage.
Yeah.
It's a great game, though.
Still is a very good game. I very much encourage anybody to play it. It does have a BGA implementation. I haven't tried that. It's one that I need to replay to see if I can convince my wife to play that one again. And I'm not really sure how it plays with 2 players. So
yeah, I don't think we ever played it with 2 players.
It's definitely stronger at a higher player count. But Bunny Kingdom, I think it's a very fun game.
I have the fantasy version, and you have the World War II version of this. So going off of Memoir 44, there's a fantasy version of Memoir 44. They both have area control elements. They're basically almost the same game, other than obviously the fantasy version isn't based on real life.
Yeah, I was totally having a hard time transitioning from bunnies to World War II.
Were you?
I was trying to think of a World War II bunny game.
I wish I could have gotten a snapshot of the picture that was in your head just barely.
Yeah.
The game is called Battlelore. Battlelore is a 2-player game, just like Memoir 44 is, because Memoir 44 is really not a 4-player game. And
although we haven't tried it with their epic.
I know.
We need to try it.
We should.
I got a story about that next week.
Okay. This is played with fantasy monsters and fantasy, dwarves and goblins, and instead of the allies versus the the Axis powers. It being fantasy is right up my alley, but I love World War II history as well. As far as wars go, that's the one I'm most fascinated with. But it plays very similar. Very, very similar to Memoir 44. So it's basically they re-implemented the game to scratch the fantasy itch for those of us that love the fantasy theme more so than real world war type themes. But it's a great game, just like Memoir 44. In fact, I'd forgotten how good those games are until you brought it to the table when it was just the two of us that one night. And honestly, those are solid games. They're really fun.
They are. They're really fun. Memoir 44 is a great game. I very much enjoy playing that. I have a ton of expansion content that I haven't even broken the seal on yet. It's kind of a tough, delicate balance, right? I want the opportunity to play those, but I really like it when we have a large group on game night, so it's not always a go-to.
Right.
But at some point, I really want to experience all that Memoir 44 that I have. One that was on my list that was, when I pulled it off of BGG, I was really a little bit surprised. Really a little bit.
That sounds really, really a little bit awesome.
It does.
Kind of.
Now I have to leave that in the episode. But I didn't realize that the game had that area control. But now that I look back at it, it's full of area control. And that's Mille Fiori.
I love Mille Fiori.
It's a great game. It's a game that my wife loves, my daughter loves. I haven't played the game with anybody who has had a sour feeling playing the game. But that's one thing that I just didn't realize, that I didn't even consider in my mind, that it's area or majority control, but it is all throughout that.
Loaded with it, yeah. Everything.
Every section that you're playing in is all about majority control and getting those benefits, but it's just kind of, I guess it just doesn't come with that. Take that element.
Yeah, it's more like a race than it is anything else, right? Which my preference as far as area majority control or influence, right, is when it's a race. When there's no take that, there's no, I'm removing your stuff to put all of my stuff on here. When it's just crap, you just added 3 things on, now I can't get it back. Dang it, right?
Yeah.
So
the visual table presence of that game is just stunning.
Yeah, it's a beautiful game.
It's like playing Azul and Sagrada all into one, epic and fun. You have one stack of cards. That one stack of cards can be used all over the board. So much going on in Mille Fiori that is such a phenomenal game. It also almost made my top 5.
Yeah, I can believe that. And that's a wonderful implementation of area control.
And one that kind of took me off guard.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. This game that I want to talk about next is one we've spoken of several times, and that's Mythic Battles Pantheon.
That's such a fun game.
Which, by the way, I just got an email today that Ragnarok is going to be shipping.
That is both good and bad news. Because that's one I really want to play. Well, I guess those are one-off experiences, so that's not as bad. Mythic Battles Pantheon, such a phenomenal game.
It creates this epic battle, right? But it's not one that is going to take hours and hours and hours to play out. Because you're just trying to get those Umphalis and either that or kill the other player's god. And so one of the two things is going to allow you to win. There's a lot of area control. Well, it's really area majority in that aspect. And certain areas can only have certain number of creatures in that area. So it's a smaller area, it can only hold 2. And anyway, there's a lot of strategy involved with the maps and with the terrain and how all of that works when you're trying to maneuver your creatures in there to try to control those Umphalis so that your opponent can't take them away from you. And what creatures you put in, you want someone that can guard that and not allow the other player to come in and snatch about from underneath of you, or send your god in and put them at risk to come and grab it and absorb it. There's a lot of strategy involved with the area control aspect of that game, just trying to protect those stones and prevent the other player from coming in and grabbing them all very quickly. Because you can lose that game very quickly if you aren't thinking ahead and trying to protect them and taking advantage of that control, the area control aspect of the game.
Feels like a tabletop miniatures game.
It does.
But it's very condensed, and you have all those feels in a bite-sized tablet that is not bite-sized at all. It still takes, it's a lot of table that covers.
Yeah, it is.
And they're all very, very, very well done miniatures.
The table presence is amazing for that game.
Yeah. You add on the stuff that you've made instead of just using cardboard, that makes it so much more exciting.
Yeah.
Another one that was kind of off for me, I didn't really think about the area control, Beyond the Sun.
Oh,
And over on
You're
the
right.
planets,
Yeah.
there's a ton of area control over there.
You're right. I didn't think about that either.
We started this off, we're like, yep, I don't like area control games, but we have a lot of them. And Beyond the Sun is a great game. I love the whole technology trees where you're trying to advance through those.
Yes.
And I love that those are not the same, with the exception of the basic 4 or 5. I can't remember right off. Every stack after that is going to be different. And that changes and gives that replayability of the game a lot of life. But then you still do have over on the planets where you're trying to monopolize your ships to take control and maintain control of those planets until you can colonize them. And then that whole battle begins again. Beyond the Sun's a great game. We still haven't played the expansion for that, which I would love to get to the table. Another game that kind of surprised me of a game that I enjoy that has area control in it.
We just need Rio Grande Games to hire an artist because
To fix which game?
Beyond the Sun.
Oh, yeah.
It's such an amazing game. I've played it twice and I have thoroughly enjoyed my experience. And I remember both times, even having played it once, both times we set it up and we're like, oh, this looks dumb.
Yeah, it looks pretty plain Jane.
It really does. For me, I love awesome components, awesome artwork, and that really adds to the experience and the immersiveness of a game. And as good as that game is, if you had really good artwork and really good components, oh my gosh, that would take it to a whole new level because the gameplay is solid.
I have a couple of games next week that are right in there that if these games had a re-implementation, well, one of them does, but if the other one had a re-implementation to boost that game, it'll be just right on that same level as that Scholars of the South Tigris.
Oh, really? Well, see, look at all these teasers you're throwing out there for next week.
I know, it's super exciting. Tune in.
I have so many on my shelf of shame for this.
There are a ton, and so many games that I have gotten that I'm excited for. Just to list some of these. Solar 175 Kickstarter that fulfilled earlier this year. I'm way excited to get that to the table. And still hasn't hit there. Excavation Earth, which the theme of this, alien species has discovered Earth after humanity is all but extinct, and they're trying to make sense of the artifacts that are left behind. Looks really good. I want to get that to the table.
I really hope that they have an alien that looks like a seagull because it's making me think of like the dingle hopper from...
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's a dingle hopper.
Yeah, it's exactly, yeah. Solar Sphere is another one. Garum is a game that I've had for a while that I really want to get to the table, and it's not that complex. It's just getting that time to get it to it. Adventureland, Ahoy, Sky Mines, and a game that I've had for a long time. In fact, one that I pawned off on you, Andy. Hey, learn this game.
Do I still have it at my house?
No, I think I finally brought it back.
Okay.
But that's Empires of the Void 2, a Ryan Lockett game.
Yeah, you did finally take that back.
Yeah.
Because I read through the rules once and then we didn't play, and then,
Yeah. But that's still, there's so many games out there that I want to get. We're not even touching a quarter of the games that are on this list that is surprisingly large for both of us.
Yeah, and some of mine that I either haven't played or some that I haven't, it's just been a really long time. Now, back in the day, I was more into like real-time strategy video games, and I enjoyed more of the conflict style games. So at that point in time, that's when I bought Rune Wars, which is very much like a Risk area control game.
Yep.
And StarCraft, the board game. I loved StarCraft, the video game.
I would actually still like to get this to the table.
We should, because StarCraft is just a fun video game, and
it is.
The board game implementation. It's been a long time since I've played it, and I remember having fun with it. We should get some of these back to the table. We should get all these back to the table. Let's be honest.
We should, yes.
Mage Wars Arena is one that I've played once, and I have a ton of stuff for. My kids were all too little at the time to really grasp how to play it, and it was just one of those two-player games that it's just trying to find a time to get a two-player game to the table is difficult. Now that my kids are older, I should probably read the rules and get that to the table before they all decide to get married and move out.
Yeah, while you still have an opportunity to get a two-player game.
Yeah, exactly. And then what surprised me is all the Tiny Epic games that are on this list, right? Tiny Epic Zombies, Tiny Epic Mechs, Tiny Epic Defenders, Tiny Epic Western, Tiny Epic...
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Tiny Epic Tactics. Let me try that again. Tiny Epic Vikings, Tiny Epic Galaxies Beyond the Black, and Ultra Tiny Epic Galaxies. My goodness. I have all of those. And I've played Zombies, Mechs, Galaxies once.
I'm right there with you. Problem that we have is too many games and not enough time. Games that I've played once that I really enjoyed, would love to get Cryo, La Cita, The Wolves, I'd love to get that to the table again. Cyclades, Shogun was a great game that I played a long time ago. Has this really cool dice tower, keeps and holds some cubes. Great mechanic that I love in that. Cry Havoc is a game I haven't played since it first came out. Just so many games we're just not going to get time to.
We won't get to play them.
Yeah. For a mechanic that we both tout that we don't like, we sure have a lot of them.
Yeah, that's true. And I have a goal for one of these on my list because I kickstarted it and I have yet to play it, and that's Petrichor. So my goal is before the end of the year, which
you're running out of time real quick.
Yes, I am. I'm very much running out of time. I am going to have that game played. I'm going to have the rules read and we're going to play that game. So that's my goal.
Challenge accepted.
It's my end of year resolution.
You're good. Well, I've met all my gaming goals, so I don't have anything to force on you.
That's good. I can force something on you guys this time.
I like it.
All right. Well, we have explored quite a few different implementations, surprising implementations, actually, of this mechanic of the area majority and area control and influence games. Honestly, there are a lot of really fun and really great games out there that use this mechanic in a wide variety of ways, which I think is great that they've moved away from just the Risk style area control, and there's just a broad way of implementing this mechanic, and it's great.
Yeah, and it doesn't all have to include the take that.
Right. In fact, a lot of them don't, which is awesome.
Surprisingly, a large selection and a mechanic that we almost considered just skimming right over. As I peeked under the covers and saw what we had, it's like, yeah, we got to talk about a lot of these. So that's a good thought, or a good discussion on area area majority and area influence games. Tune in next week. We're going to talk about our top 5. Hopefully Doug is back. If not, it's going to be just Andy and I again.
Until next time,
we'll see you maintaining control of that table at the game table. Control of the table at the game table. Yeah, it's going to work.
Has to now.
Thank you for listening and being a part of Meeple Nation. If you would be so kind as to follow, subscribe, share, and rate or review this podcast, it really helps to spread the fun. You can be more involved in supporting the podcast by joining the nation at patreon.com/Meeple Nation, or you can find a link at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. And while you're there, look at all our extra content. There are links to all our past episodes, a wide variety of blogs, pictures from our Instagram feed, and bios for all the hosts and our awesome bloggers. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all under Meeple Nation. If you would like to chat with the hosts or other members of the nation, you can join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. We hope to see you again at a game night, a con, or maybe a suspense-driven evening of werewolf. Thank you for listening and supporting Meeple Nation, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We very much want to thank our patrons who help keep the podcast running. I personally want to thank my co-hosts for all the help they provide with both content here on the podcast, in addition to what we have available on our website. Without them, the podcast would not happen. If you too would like to support the podcast, you can join the nation at patreon.com/Meeple_Nation, or you can find a link to Patreon at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. If you have any questions, comments, or games you feel should be on our radar, you can always reach us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you. I am grateful to Doug and Andy who helped me edit episodes, and I want to thank James and Kim Clark who do the editing on our blogs and on our webpage, which can be found at meeplenation.com. We want to thank Brain Detergent for our music. If you want to find more from him, you can follow his links that can be found on our webpage, or simply search for Brain Detergent on YouTube to find more of his tracks. Thank you again for listening and being part of the Meeple Nation community.